Hello, I'm John O'Flaherty, the B3 Burner, and today we again look back 4 years at my 1970 Ford LTD, this time with video instead of pictures. Now, a few things to keep in mind. One, again, I no longer own this car. Two, the video is from 4 years ago. And three, at one point in the video I make mention of showing you the Grille pictures later, quote unquote, but disregard because you've already seen them in my last video. And four, by March 31st, 2018, I'm at a crossroad where I talk both about what's been done up to that point versus what has yet to be done. But it's all so far in the past now, it causes a bit of confusion. Bear with me. The chronology would have been simpler had I uploaded as soon as I finished the videos, but alas, I fell behind. So this begs the question, why share video 4 years later about a car I don't even own anymore? Well, my hard work was a source of pride for me, and I wish to share it, even if the car is gone. I've already caught you up on most of the recent items regarding my Cadillac, so time to step back further in time. Without any further hesitation, let's get into this. Hello, John O'Flaherty, the B3 Burner, with you again, this last day of March 2018. And it's time for an update on what I've been doing with the Ford LTD. And I have a few other things I want to show you in a little bit, but it's time to start thinking about the trunk and the fact that it's still whitish blue on the inside, even though the rest of the car is black. It begs the question, why haven't I taken care of this sooner? Well, 2 years have gone by, and I wasn't necessarily always motivated, and at times you might say downright lazy. Wanted to prepare, do my homework, figure out exactly how I wanted to approach this task, and I want to approach it in 3 parts. In the meantime, it was kind of an interesting conversation piece. People asked what did the color used to be. It was easy to show them, and the fact that it's a good thing that the previous owner painted it black, much to my advantage, as I think it's a better looking car because of it. But it still begs taking care of, even if only 10% of the time the trunk's open where people can see it. That 10%, when I'm at a car show and I'm lifting it open to get the lawn chairs and the ice chest out, it can be a source of embarrassment amongst my fellow car show attendees. So time to get it taken care of, and I'm going to do that soon. But before I do that, I need to consider that this project is broken down into 3 specific categories. Category number 1 is simply painting the bluish-white trunk surface black, which sounds very simple in its own right, and certainly a black can of gloss spray paint is a relatively easy thing to do. It's the preparation that you need to do beforehand, taping off the sections that you don't want getting hit with black paint, and also getting rid of any rust spots that have taken place, but we don't want to obsess over it and spend too much time on it. The car is in California, and it's not like it's going to rust excessively, even if I don't sand down a bare metal and put a Bondo on it. That was my original thought, and someone who's an expert in the field told me so long as the car is in California and stays in California, probably not necessary. So the first step I'm looking at is sanding this down so that it's at least as close to bare metal as possible. And for that, I may not even need sandpaper. This dark red scruff pad should be good enough for getting off the base amount of rust, or even just roughing up the smooth surface enough that we can paint primer over it. Second step will be this one-step rust converter aerosol, which works as both a rust stopper and a primer, and I'll lay that down first after sanding. And then finally put on my black smooth enamel, gloss enamel, to finish up the project. Now, that's the first part. Second part is the trunk floor, which has rust, and I'm going to want to sand that down because then I want to prep it third with this rubberized undercoating that almost acts like a spray-on bed liner, only not nearly as thick. And if I don't fix all the leaks and it still gets water inside the trunk, at least it's not going on metal and continuing to rust, it's just going on the protective coating. It's a nice compromise that's just short of carpeting the trunk. I don't want to carpet the trunk if I'm not 100% sure I've fixed all the leaks, because I don't want wet, soggy carpet that's just eventually going to mold. I can't ensure that I'm going to fix all the leaks, so I'd rather work with a rubberized undercoating as a compromise that's better than bare metal, even if it's not as good as carpet. But before I lay down the primer and the undercoating, I do want to take that the trunk floor metal down to bare metal or as close as possible, at least get rid of the surface rust before I lay down the primer. And of course, it's not necessary to put gloss black on the floor if I'm only going to cover that up with undercoating anyway. The third and final project, which isn't important cosmetically, but is important as a practical matter, is putting that undercoating I was talking about earlier as a blocker, a moisture blocker, around where I think I'm having water get in. And I can't prove it, but I think it's coming around the perimeter of the taillights, and I think it's coming in behind the screw fastener of the Ford logo or emblem on the back of the car. Brief water testing with a hose and drying it off, ran some water tests, leak tests, and it would appear that none of the water is leaking from around the trunk seal, which is good. At least that's not something I have to worry about. But that it would be coming in through the perimeter of the taillights, which tells me that the weather stripping around the bezels is probably wore out. And I don't want to take that apart and try to replace it, as I might make it worse than it currently is. Simply putting a rubberized coating around the perimeter to block the leaking might be the best course of action. And so we'll see where it goes from there. Okay, so why the trunk floor pan doesn't have a ton of rust, you can see where it's starting in spots. It's not something we want to just leave alone if we can easily sand it down and then protect it. And what I don't want to do is lay primer over rust and then put a undercoating, a rubberized undercoating, over something that I haven't cleaned up. Better to clean it up, get it all out of the way, and then take care of your business than to leave unfinished business in there. So we obviously want to get the trunk floor. And then I really can't sand in the corners because I can't see what I'm doing. But we definitely want to prime and rubber coat that, as well as on the driver's side. Now from an outside view, this is what I was talking about with the taillights. The perimeter, where the gasket, that's the word I was looking for earlier, gasket, goes around the outside of the taillight housing, where it meets the inside of the trunk, leaks, because that's where I see the droplets of water coming through. Also directly behind the Ford logo, it leaks. And if we come around on the inside, you'll see what I'm talking about. This right here has issues. And water drips right down, comes down here, and eventually makes its way onto the floor of the trunk. Here's the gasket. It feels like foam, but it feels stiff. And this is lit red because that's shining in from the outside. Just comes right on in and helps itself. I imagine back when the car was new, that wasn't a problem. Almost 50 years later, things change. Not too surprising. So that's what has to be taken care of there. And as far as the lip of the trunk goes, this is where all the water would have dripped down just above where the lid of the trunk meets the lip above the weather stripping. So we have a small rust hole here, have another one over here, a huge one over here, and one there and one there. Person I spoke with yesterday said there is no point in trying to put Bondo on that and sand it down or put any sort of protector on it, though I might do it anyway. Sand down the rust to near bare metal. I experimented with that yesterday. Your main thing is you want to rough up the smooth paint and make it just, not coarse rough, but fine rough. Just enough that new paint sticks to the old paint. And what I may also do is see some of these rusty spots. It's just, get in there and clean it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but any rust I can get rid of and return to bare metal is better than not. And that's kind of the projects that we're looking at with the trunk in mind. So one of the pet projects that I'm happiest with as far as how it turned out was painting the front grille. Now, there's a lot of painting that needs to be done on this car in other areas, namely getting rid of the blue paint in the trunk and in the hood area. And that was a higher priority from a practical standpoint and cosmetic. But another thing that bothered me was how the grille sections were getting sun faded after almost 50 years, and I wanted to blacken those out and get them a little fresher looking. You'd be surprised what a coat of new paint will do to make a car look 50 years younger. And so it went that I started off with black semi-gloss spray paint that's really designed for trim, meaning plastic and rubber and things that you don't want glossy black that would look sort of odd or awkward that way. And I proceeded, and I started this on February 7th, and we'll go through a series of still photographs chronicling my adventures, so to speak. But I started off by spray painting the entire grille and the egg crate squares black, both passenger side and driver's side. Then once that dried up, I took silver paint, silver chrome paint, and went over with a very small paintbrush these individual line areas to really make those pop and bring out the contrast. Now, I didn't know this, but these did not start off as painted lines. They were actually plastic silver strips over white plastic. It was tape. That's how cheap they started getting by the early 70s. Nothing was pure metal anymore. It was tape. So I peeled off the tape where I could and applied silver paint over it. I actually think it looks better, and the peeling stopped. Then once I finished that part, I said, hey, I want this logo to look red again. But I didn't want to pay for a brand new logo, which would have cost quite a bit of money. So I took a little bit of Tester's red spray paint, or brush paint like you would use on models, and just sort of etched out my own rectangle. And for pennies on the dollar, it looks a lot better than it did before. And the red really offers a contrast that I feel is much better. Then finally what I did, and this was a really key point, was I didn't like how the black was starting to get sun faded in the windowsill below the headlights. So I repainted that part, and it really offers a nice contrast between the black here and the silver here. Not lost on me was also the importance of how the grille looked when the headlight doors were open. And back inside the headlight buckets, the floor, the sides, and the back behind the actual headlight bulbs was also starting to get faded. And I was concerned how that looked. The tray was faded in front as well as the back. By spray painting the back, it really increased it did two things. It increased the contrast between the bulbs in the back, and dimensionally, I think it gave the bulbs more depth. One of the things that really makes this grille look good is how the headlights are recessed behind the bumper. The darker it is in the back, behind the headlights, the deeper it looks. The more it increases that three-dimensional look, and that was something I was really going for. When this started to get sun-bleached gray, it sort of killed that look and made it look more two-dimensional. So I did that on the driver's side, and I was also careful to make sure I did it equally well on the passenger side. And I was really impressed with the way it came out. It came out much better than I thought. Well, a closer look at what I'm talking about. You can see how I painted all inside. Not only did I get the tray, which is visible when the headlight, the hidden headlights are down, the hideaways, but I got everything inside over here. I can't make it much brighter. Clear back to the corner and the back of the headlights, behind the aiming and retention screws. And back in here. Now again, it's pure black, so it's hard to see where it ends. That's a good thing. That's exactly what I was trying to do. In doing so, it creates a better sense of contrast if I were to back up and say you saw this car on the road. Those headlights appear more inset than they do otherwise. Let's move over to the right side and you'll get a better sense of what I'm talking about. They almost seem to disappear into the darkness, giving the car a greater sense of mystery. That is exactly the effect I was going for. That was not accidental. That was quite on purpose. And I'm very happy with the way it came out. Final area that I wanted to work on, and it's still halfway done, I have yet to finish it, is I didn't like how low the contrast was between the strips of these pot metal grill on the nose, the Bunky Knudsen nose, versus the tops of it. You had silver on light gray. Just didn't do it for me. However, on the right side, the passenger side, you'll see that I have already completed silver facing out, black facing up. The idea being that the contrast between the silver and the black is much more pronounced, again, like this, like the rest of the grille, giving the car much higher contrast, much meaner look as far as that contrast between silver and black, which is a constant theme throughout the coloring and the design of the vehicle. This side you can see I haven't completed yet, and the silver facing forward with the light off gray facing up just doesn't provide the same amount of contrast and doesn't look as good. So we have yet to finish that part, but when I get to it and complete this project, the whole front end project, the whole grille project will be complete, and it's going to look really good. I'm going to be very satisfied with the outcome and proud of myself that I was able to start it and get it completed. And that was a rather abrupt ending to Chapter 8, so let me finish by concluding that we've looked at what we're going to do in the future, chapters 1 through 4, with the trunk, and next video we'll go into greater detail with that. And then the final chapters 5 through 8, we reviewed what we already saw last video, just in greater depth. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm John O'Flaherty, the B3 Burner, and we'll see you later.